In this segment, I'm going to be doing some testing, and of course I should start at the battery. That's where you'll have a lot of problems. And I would be expecting to see somewhere around 12.5 to 13 volts. 12.91, so this battery looks pretty good. When you're testing, you can see these connectors here are actually kind of rusted and corroded, and it's going to be difficult to make a good electrical connection here. In fact, you might even get some false readings. So when I'm checking, I always take the probe and go right on the lug on the battery on each side, and you have to hold it and put a little pressure on it to make sure that you're going to get a good electrical connection. Just looking at these terminals, I'm definitely going to want to clean them. I mean, while you got the hood off, it's something that, it's simple to do. The hood actually makes it almost impossible to do any work on the battery. Taking the hood off isn't a big problem, but it is, something, just another thing you have to do. So start out, get the hood off so you can get to the battery. Okay, the battery is at around 12 volts, 12.91, and I'm going to hook a battery charger up here. Again, the battery charger, I like to get it onto the lug, not onto a bolt. It's not going to probably make as good a connection there. Okay, the battery that I'm using has three ranges: 2 amp, 15 amp, and 110 amp. The light is now on, and when that light is green, that means that the battery is charged. So I did charge this battery earlier, and if you want to charge a battery, you should not do it on a real high rate. Charging it at 2 amps is, good. If you need it done a little quicker, then you go with 15 amp. This also has a 110 amp setting, which if you have a diesel tractor or something that, there's just not enough power in the battery, basically this is going to give you 110 amps that, you'll be able to get most anything started. Okay, so let's check the voltage again. And now I've got 13.11. So the voltage of the battery charger is always going to be higher, and I would have expected it to be a little higher than that, but basically that's what's going to charge your battery. If you have a discharged battery that's down maybe 11.5 volts or something like that, the battery charger is actually going to charge it up and bring it up to around the 12.5, 13 volt range. So it looks like we have a workable battery. This battery, I didn't see anything other than this. It's a U1L250, and I'm assuming this is a 250 cold cranking amp battery. The tracker actually, the John Deere battery, should be a 350 cold cranking amp. The extra cold cranking amps means that when it's 32 degrees, that's how they measure this, the batteries are going to have whatever they're rated, 250, 350 cold cranking amps, and that's where it's rated at 32 degrees. If it's 0 degrees, it's going to be less cold cranking amps. If you go up to 70 degrees, it's going to be more cold cranking amps. So that's just based on, the ambient temperature to determine your cold cranking amps. And this is where I'm going to just show you the test light. Positive here, negative here, and that's just an indication that I have battery. If I turn it around backwards, the bulb in here is just a DC type of voltage that's operating the bulb. and lighting it, it doesn't matter, with your polarity. This is one of the times where polarity doesn't always, isn't required, but you definitely do want to have a good connection. And this is where I got the jumpers, and a lot of times I'll use a jumper and connect here to the battery. If I need to extend this, I want to go to the back of the tractor. You can connect to other ground points on the tractor, but you need to be careful because some of the bolts that you see might not be going back to the metal frame. They're just going to be, holding something in place. So you always want to make sure that you have a good connection to ground, and the best place to get that is at the battery. Okay, so if this is a good battery, I shouldn't need to do a load test, and that's what this little device here is. Load test is going to give me more information about the battery, and basically what it's doing is it's receiving its battery directly on these two leads. When I first connected it, it didn't light up. The reason is I'm connecting here. I had one of these leads on the bolt head, which is rusty, and this is what I should do, is go around and get a good connection on that lead terminal that's on top. Okay, so if I want to do a test, I'm going to test with the battery in the vehicle, and it's a regular flooded. This means it's a lead acid battery. There are some other sealed batteries. There are gas mat or glass mat, they call them, and gel. So there's other types, but in tractors you're usually going to just see this flooded type, which means it's got the battery acid. And this is asking me to set the cold cranking amps, and in this case I did set it to 250 because that's what I think the battery is. And now it's testing, and it's saying that the battery is healthy, charge is 98%, and the rated cold cranking amps are 250, but that's just the number that I put in, and it says a good battery. So this is something that I like to use this. If you got a battery, you might have a battery that's marginal, and you think you've got a good battery, and it's like, no, there's some problems there. So I like to take that and do a little testing with it. I also have a battery jump box, and basically this is a battery that's portable, and you take it over and you're going to put it in parallel across your battery and be able to start your vehicle. This particular one has a light built into it. It has a air pump. It has 12 volt DC outputs where you can plug this in. If something needs 12 volts, you plug it in there. And it also has an inverter where I can get AC out of the jump box. It's a battery in there, but there's a device called an inverter where it takes the DC voltage and actually inverts it into AC voltage. And if I'm going around with my phone and I need to charge it, there also is a USB connection on here where I can charge anything that is a USB device. The newer ones that they have, these jump boxes, are basically like a capacitor. They're going to store charge and give you just a quick, maybe 3 or 4 second burst of high current, and in a lot of cases that might start your car, but if it doesn't, it's discharged, and you're going to have to then wait again and charge it up. So I've had this one for about 20 years, and it's very handy to have. I take it in my truck, and if you don't have a flashlight, there's one built in, and it's just a handy thing to have. Okay, so if we decided that the battery is good, one of the next things I would want to do would be to check and turn the switch on and do some checking as far as what's happening with the rest of the So I've got my little test light, and if I have an electrical problem, okay, you can use this, and basically what you're doing is checking for voltage. This is the control board with all the relays and interlocks on it that are going to be used so that you can have your different safety functions. And you need to turn the ignition switch on. I've got a light, that means I have current there. And I'm checking my fuses. Okay, if you have this test light, there's actually a little metal tip on your fuses. And so what I'm doing is I'm just touching that probe there, and that's telling me whether I've got a good fuse or not. And this one does look like it has a bad fuse. Nope, there it is. It's kind of hard to see. I don't have my reading glasses, but this is just showing me that I do have a battery connection there. One of the things I always like to do is to pull the fuses. And just always check them to see if they're blown or not. And this one came out hard, and you can actually see there's corrosion on these terminals. So it's always a good idea when you take a fuse out. What I like to do is I'll put some WD-40 on it, and that way when you slide it in and out, it's going to actually leave a little bit of a film on there, and that'll help make a better electrical connection. And if you have a problem, you might need to replace the fuse. In fact, this one I'm sure I'm just going to replace it because it's bent here and it might not be making a good connection. Okay, the lights on the dash came on, so I know I'm getting power to the instrument cluster. But if you look at the temperature gauge, that's pegged. The fuel gauge is stuck on full, which isn't that unusual, and the hour meter is blank. There's nothing there, and that again is something on these tractors. It's very common for the hour meters to stop working, and to buy a new one of these instrument clusters is somewhere, it's a little over $1,000. So that's something that I'm going to be taking this apart and looking at it. This switch back here is for a power point, and a lot of new tractors have this power point. And what you're going to do here is plug something in that you want to be able to supply 12-volt power to. This switch here controls that power. For some reason, the switch isn't working, so I'm going to have to find out where the problem is and follow that back to the source of the problem. The fuse for the power point is behind this panel, and basically this is a 20 amp fuse. The fuses are color coded. The other ones were blue. That means it's a 15 amp fuse. This one is yellow. Whenever you change fuses, you want to make sure you use the same amperage fuse, and basically that's where the colors do mean something. Okay, and this is the starter where the battery connection is on one side, and the other side is what actually goes to the starter motor. There's a lead coming in here to this connector, and it's a purple wire. John Deere, they've color-coded their wiring, and I know that if I see a purple wire, that normally is going to be something that's associated with the starter. So if I wanted to, the starter, this is actually a relay. This is your starting solenoid, and it's looking for a battery to operate that solenoid. If you had a problem and you're trying to troubleshoot, what I will do is pull this off and then just connect 12 volt directly from this stud with a little jumper wire over to the solenoid where the purple wire was, and this will actually operate the solenoid, and your tractor should turn over. If you have a problem it doesn't turn over, then you'd look back at the battery. If I'm jump starting, you can actually make a connection to here to jump start if you have jumper cables, and it's just a matter of the other end of the cable goes directly to the battery lug and this side comes here, but this would be kind of hard to get anything on there to jump it. But on some tractors, they're a lot more accessible and you can get in there and actually be able to connect a jumper to it. Okay, one of the things is you want to connect or clean your battery connections, and this is where the battery connection, the ground wire, actually comes over here, and it's going to be connecting to the frame and to the engine. So when you have a ground problem, if you check the battery, you're only checking one end of this cable. So then you want to come back here and check to make sure this, take it apart, make sure it's clean, put it back together. The same thing with this red lead. You wouldn't think that you could have oxidation and that this could cause a problem, but I have had tractors where I had to take this off, clean it, put it back together, and then it worked. So there's a lot of things on tractors. It's a little bit of trial and error, but what you want to do is make sure, if you're doing work on the tractor, you want to disconnect the battery so that you're not working on the instrument cluster or something else and have a short that's going to be a dangerous thing to have. Okay, so question is, you have two terminals connecting to your battery. Does it make any difference which one you remove first? Should you remove the positive first or the negative first? Well, it does make a difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let's remove the positive terminal. If I remove the positive terminal, I have a wrench in here and I'm trying to loosen this. I might accidentally touch the wrench to this metal heat shield up here, and if I do that, the battery is now going to be connected directly to ground and your wrench will probably turn red. It's going to be just burning hot. So you never want to remove the positive side. You remove the negative side first. If I remove the negative side and I accidentally touch this same housing, this is negative, there is no potential difference, so you're not going to have a dangerous situation. Something else is when you charge batteries, it actually produces some hydrogen gas. And so you need to be careful because that can cause an explosion. And then if you're back on one of these terminals and it arcs, that could be your ignition point. So there's a lot of things that when you're testing, just take your time, and start at the battery is usually a good starting point. If you hear relays clicking, you turn your ignition on and you try to start it and you hear like clicking. 90% of the time that means that your battery voltage is too low. It's too low and the relays can't operate. So that's just another, as far as listening, you can hear on this tractor when you turn the ignition on, you can hear the fuel pump running, and it's going to run for about 5 seconds. So that's another way, just listening, you can, in a lot of cases, get a little bit of an indication what's going on with your tractor. This is my John Deere X485, and it is equipped with a power point. And that's this socket. Basically, it's like a cigarette lighter socket. And what I did is I have this little adapter here, which is actually a USB charger. It can charge 2 devices, and when I plug it in, I have to turn the switch on. This is the PowerPoint switch. I have to turn that on, and it's telling me that I have 12.4 volts. So I don't have to take a meter, take the hood off, do all kinds of work before I can even test the battery. This is just a simple way that you can test the battery. It's a direct connection to the battery. It's not going through this ignition switch. Turn this on, and that will tell me I've got 12.4 volts. So I bought this off Amazon for like 15 bucks, and in my opinion it's well worth the money. I also use something called a battery minder, and this is basically just a little trickle charger. And what I'm going to do with this is, whenever I need to just top off a battery, make sure it's charged up in the winter, you know, I can use this, plug it in, and I've made an adapter where I can take the battery minder and plug it into my tractors. If I have 3 tractors, I plug one in, leave it for a day or so, take and plug it in another tractor. For me to transfer this between, I've got 3 tractors and a gator, and I can do this and keeps the batteries charged. Chances are, when you go to start them, you know, they're going to be okay in the spring. Worst thing you can do with a battery is leave it for months on end. And then I used to have a boat, and every spring I'd go down, when I'd go start the boat, it didn't start, so I usually ended up buying a new battery. But these are handy little devices. The battery minder, that's a good idea. You know, it's going to save you a lot of money on batteries. And this other little USB charger, the only reason I bought it was for the LED display, so that I can just plug it in, and if you have a car, it works in a car, it works in your truck. Any vehicle that has a cigarette lighter type of a plug, you know, you can plug this in. So that's all for now. I'll be seeing you later.